Hello and welcome to another Alzheimer's Society of Calgary Facebook video talk. I'm Paul Martel, Manager of Learning and Support Services, and joining me today is...
I'm Padmaja Genesh, Learning Specialist at the Alzheimer's Society of Calgary.
Great. And we're here to do an update on some of the recent research that's been happening around possible new treatments for Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. Been a while since we've done one, and we thought it was time. But before we get into the new treatments that are potential new treatments that are being explored, have there been any changes to the existing? I know there's only 4 drugs that are currently approved for use. Has there been any changes with any of those?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's a good introduction because we see that there have been some changes in terms of the drug delivery because as I understand, the last drug that was licensed for treatment of Alzheimer's disease was memantine or Ebixa, and that was licensed and made available in 2004. Okay, and since then there's been this ongoing search for a cure, and nothing happened for a while other than even though several drugs were studied, there was nothing definite came out of that. But there was in 2008 one of the acetylcholinesterase inhibitors, among the three, when we go back to the 4 drugs, they are Aricept or donepezil. Then there is Exelon, or otherwise known as rivastigmine. Then there is galantamine, and also there is the memantine or Ebixa. So these are the 4 drugs. Of these, the first 3 drugs, they belong to a class called acetylcholinesterase inhibitors, and they work by increasing the level of acetylcholine in the brain. And acetylcholine is a transmitter that is required for normal functioning, the communication to happen in the brain. So these were all available as oral tablets. And then the 4th one added was memantine or Ebixa. And the way it worked was by actually reducing the level of a toxic chemical called glutamate, toxic substance. And that is produced in the brain as nerve cells keep on dying, getting destroyed. And that could actually bind to certain specific receptors on nerve cells and accelerate their damage, their destruction.
So it speeds things up.
Yeah, speeds things up. So memantine or Ebixa, the role of Ebixa was actually to inhibit that, to block that glutamate from accessing or binding to those receptors and bringing about that accelerated destruction of nerve cells. And that's the way it works. So it was originally intended for the late stage of Alzheimer's disease, that's moderate to advanced, whereas the other 3 acetylcholinesterase inhibitors were intended for the early stage. So this is what we have been following until now. Now, in 2008, the rivastigmine or Exelon became available as a patch.
Okay.
Because one of the side effects of all these acetylcholinesterase inhibitors was gastrointestinal disturbances. So some people could not take it. It was not suiting everyone because of the nausea and vomiting and all that happened. So with this patch, we have an alternate method of delivering the same drug.
That doesn't
affect the stomach that much. But at the same time, there was a risk of overuse. That was reported. Because it is something that you leave, you forget, and person might pull it off and apply another one again. So there was a risk of overuse. But that is the one change that happened. Another change that has recently happened is that it has been recognized that memantine and the acetylcholinesterase inhibitors, Aricept, they work much better if they are given in tandem, not sequentially, one after the other, but if they are given together,
so at the same
time, they can actually ease behavioral symptoms of Alzheimer's disease to a much better extent.
Okay.
Yeah. So thereby they say you can avoid using any other drug for managing behaviors if these are given in combination. And this has already been accepted in United States and United Kingdom, but we have not yet warmed up to that idea, it looks like. Because for us now, the memantine or Ebixa is not covered by Alberta Blue Cross. So that could be the reason why
it's been a little slower.
It's been slow in getting to that. So these are the changes in terms of the currently available medications.
Okay, thank you. And I know we did a video a little while back with Dr. Mangat
Yes.
about
Yeah.
those medications
Yeah,
in more detail.
absolutely. Yeah.
And then, okay, so looking at new potential treatments, and I want to be careful because you used the word cure, and unless I'm not understanding something, most of what's going on is stuff that might modify the course of the condition or the disease, not cure, right?
Right.
Am I right in that?
The thing is, the intention is cure. Okay, that's a goal, ultimate goal. But all the drugs that have been studied and have reached the final stage of study, they might only be beneficial in slowing down the progression, like a disease modifying agent.
Right.
We are not expecting a cure from any of those drugs, even if those studies succeed. All these medications in phase 3, but if they become successful, they are very unlikely to become a cure, because as we understand the disease, it's a complex disease with a lot of other mechanisms. So cure is more elusive at this point of time, and would look like a combination of drugs, not just one or two drugs, but it would be a combination of drugs attacking or trying to deal with that disease from the different possible mechanisms.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then looking at the stuff that's been in phase 3 trials, I know, again, the last time we sat and talked about this, one of the drugs we talked about, we came out of recording the video to learn it had been pulled from its phase 3 trial, and there's been further developments with that one. So maybe we should start with that drug.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start off with that class of drug, which is in phase 3.
Okay.
And to clarify, phase 3 is that final stage of study involving people with about thousands of people with the condition. Okay. And it's usually conducted over a longer period of time, up to 4 years or even more. And the goal of the phase 3 stage of study is to study the effectiveness, the benefits, and the adverse reactions.
Okay.
That's why it's conducted that long. Okay. So 3 groups of drugs have reached the phase 3 stage at this point of time, and one group is the anti-amyloid antibody.
Right.
And they work by attaching to the amyloid plaques in the brain and clearing them. That's how they work. And so we have the anti-amyloid antibodies, aducanumab, crenezumab, and gantenerumab. These drugs have reached the phase 3. They end with ab.
Okay.
They end with ab.
I cannot keep these names straight.
Yeah. So they have reached the final phase 3 of the study. And of this, the one that you were mentioning, Paul, you were referring to, is actually aducanumab. Because aducanumab was showing a lot of success in phase 2 and early phase 3 trials. But the condition was these drugs had to be administered in the very early stage, preclinical stage, even before the person starts exhibiting symptoms. That is when these anti-amyloid antibodies do work. So the study was conducted, and the study was supposed to conclude by the end of this year. But surprising turn of events happened in March. We heard, just soon after our talk, we heard that the drug all studies involving aducanumab had to be terminated. They pulled it off, they pulled off those studies, and that was because of a futility analysis. So the manufacturers, Biogen and Eisai, they're the 2 manufacturing companies. When a team of their staff looked at the performances or the study stats from the first 18 months, they found that this drug they felt that this aducanumab is unlikely to achieve its primary endpoint.
Okay.
Achieve its goal. Even though it was removing plaques, a proportionate improvement in cognition they did not see.
Okay, so it wasn't they didn't think it was having an effect.
Yeah, and they didn't expect that it would have an effect. But later on, now what has happened is, after the studies were terminated, they landed upon 3 more months of additional data. And when their team again scrutinized, went very closely over all that, what they found was they were able to identify a subgroup of participants in those studies who were on a high dose of aducanumab, and these individuals were actually benefiting significantly in terms of cognition and function. So even showing improvements in that means improvements in memory, in their orientation, spatial orientation, and also language, as well as ability to do day-to-day tasks. And was a kind of that revelation made them come back again, re-emerge, or reintroduce aducanumab as a significant player. And what they are now trying to do is to get a biologic license from the FDA to continue providing aducanumab for some more period of time to those who were already participating in the study.
Okay, so they're trying now to, after
To
they've stopped
continue
it,
that,
they're
yeah.
trying to continue.
To continue it, and they hope that if they gather enough data on this particular group, rather than being distracted by the other groups, on this particular group, they might have enough data to push for an FDA approval later on.
Okay.
So that is where we are at in terms of aducanumab. It's a very interesting turn of events.
It is.
For sure.
It is. I don't
Yeah.
think I've ever seen a drug pulled from
And then
the study and then reemerge this way. So.
Absolutely. And the other two drugs, crenosumab and gantenerumab, they are both in two other studies, and those studies are supposed to conclude by the end of next year, and they are showing lot of promise. Especially gantenerumab is showing a lot of promise in reducing the amyloid plaque significantly and improving cognition. And crenosumab is now being recruited in a study that is directed, that's involving people with familial Alzheimer's disease.
Okay.
So that's their study. That's an offshoot of their original study, and that is also going on. So this is something to look at. There is also another anti-amyloid antibody which I would like to mention here.
Yeah.
We talked about that in March as well. It is called BAN2401, and it's also an anti-amyloid antibody designed to work the same way, attaching to amyloid plaques and removing them from the brain. But this drug has got a difference, is that it works even when administered to people in early Alzheimer's disease.
Okay.
So not just the preclinical or before the onset of symptoms, it can even be given to people in the early stage, and it was showing benefit. So it's like a late stage antibody. So because of that, it has got some kind of people are curious and they want to know how it is faring.
Okay.
Okay, so that's one group of drugs in the phase 3 trial. Another group that has now reached the phase 3 trial is a combination therapy that it's got a tricky name, ALZT,
Okay.
OPT1.
All right.
So it's an Alzheimer's therapy, ALZT, OPT1. Now it's a combination of two medications. One is an asthma medication, which is called cromolyn,
Okay.
and combined with ibuprofen.
So,
Now this is trying to target two aspects of the disease. So one is the plaques and the other one is inflammation.
okay.
Now, even though cromolyn was originally approved and is being used for as an asthma medication, when it was rerouted in the treatment to study its effectiveness in the treatment of Alzheimer's, what they found was that cromolyn is able to remove plaques. It is all because of its structural similarity to anti-amyloid antibody.
Okay.
Structurally similar, so it is able to bind to amyloid and remove it. At the same time, being an anti-asthma agent, it has got an anti-inflammatory effect as well.
property, Right.
And along with that, we are combining another anti-inflammatory agent, which is ibuprofen.
Yeah.
And this is showing a lot of promise in phase 3 studies, which are being conducted in different locations in United States. And that is something that again, the research community is very hopeful, because it's a combination therapy that is attacking the disease from two different perspectives.
And when we're saying with all of these, I think the early results are promising. It's not only that they're removing plaques,
They're also
that there's some cognitive function
absolutely.
improvement as
they're improving cognition as well, along at the same time as removing plaques, because this is based on the understanding that inflammation is a significant driver of Alzheimer's disease.
Right.
So,
yes.
yeah.
We've certainly seen that in a lot of
we
studies.
see that. And that was what was not addressed by the anti-amyloid antibodies. They were not doing that. So this drug tries to tackle that aspect of the disease as well. And the third drug that has now very recently been conditionally approved for treatment of Alzheimer's disease in China is it's called GV971. It's called oligomanate.
All right.
Oligomanate, the simple
I'm
drug.
not going to try to pronounce
Okay,
it.
oligomanate, and this is a drug that is derived from seaweeds. It's basically a red-brown algae, that kind of family. Okay, and how it acts is, it acts by reconditioning the gut microbiome. By microbiome, we mean all the bacteria that's in the intestines, and it's believed that in Alzheimer's disease, there is a lot of evidence to show that people have an altered gut microbiome. Their gut microbiome is altered, and because of that, they are releasing from the intestines some byproducts of metabolism are produced, which are capable of causing inflammation and driving the inflammation within the body as well as in the brain. So these are some some metabolites such as phenylalanine.
Okay.
Phenylalanine. These are amino acids,
Yeah.
Phenylalanine and isoleucine. These are amino acids, but then what they are also found to cause local inflammation and drive the inflammation to the nervous system, to the brain as well. So this drug, the GV971 or oligomanate, in preclinical studies, what they found, that's in rodents, in animals, what they found was that this drug was able to recondition the gut microbiome and get rid of all the toxic bacteria there, and reduce the release of these harmful metabolites that can cause inflammation. So what they observed in rodents was that there was decrease in inflammation, there was decrease in the release of these intestinal metabolites, there was decrease in the formation of plaques and tangles in the brain, and improved cognition.
Okay.
So they conducted a phase 3 study in China. This was confined to China. It was a big study involving about over 800 people, and they studied giving a high dose 900 milligram of this oligomanate twice daily for 24 weeks, and they observed them for 36 weeks. So that's like we are talking about 9 months.
Right.
And all of the participants showed significant improvement in cognition, and these benefits were detectable as early as at the end of the first month.
So seems to work quite fast.
Yeah, and they were sustained. They remained sustained until the end of the 9 months.
Okay, so even after they stopped
taking the drug.
Oh.
So this is now in China. This drug has received a conditional approval. That means it can be marketed and made available only in China, not the rest of the world. And the rest of the countries. Now what's being planned is a global phase 3 trial using the oligomanate in America, in US, in US, Europe, and in Asia, in other countries in Asia. This is being planned in early 2020.
All right.
So these are the three groups of drugs that are looking very promising at this time of the study.
Yes.
And again, as you said, if any one of these drugs does succeed, if it gets through the phase 3, and once they finish phase 3, they can apply for FDA
approval for the drug becoming available to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. So even if any one of these drugs clears that, then we have to remember that it's not going to be a cure. It's just going to be a disease modifying agent that can slow down the progression of the disease.
Right. Okay, I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind with all of these.
Yeah, it's not a cure that we are talking about at this point of time.
Okay, so that's the stuff in phase 3, which, as you said, is sort of the hopefully the final step before widespread adoption or use.
Yeah.
Is there anything sort of in the stage before that, phase 2?
Yeah, there are a few drugs in phase 2. And just before going to phase 2, I just want to point out one drug which was a significant player in phase 3 but failed.
Okay.
So, so just making sure that being aware that there's a possibility of drugs failing.
Yes.
And this group of drug was, it belonged to the class called BACE1 inhibitors. And how those drugs acted was actually by reducing the formation of plaques in the brain.
Okay.
Because
so they didn't clean them out. They tried
reduced
to
the
stop
formation
them
right away.
Yeah.
Because it's formed. The plaques. The first point, it's beginning from a stable protein called amyloid precursor protein, and by the action of two enzymes, it is breaking up into short pieces or oligomers, as they call, and that was the starting point for the plaques. Okay. So where amyloid, the BACE inhibitors were acting was actually stopping these enzymes from breaking down the stable protein.
Okay.
And reducing the formation of plaques. And there were several drugs in that category. All of them successfully failed, but there was a lone survivor until close to September. It was still surviving, and that was elenbecestat. And it was showing a lot of benefit, a lot of promise, improving cognition, at the same time, reducing the amount of plaques. But just this September, that study was also terminated because of safety concerns.
So the side effects
were more than the benefits. So that is something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
So going back to your question, Paul, about phase 2 drugs. So there is the anti-amyloid vaccine. It's called UB311, and it is now completed phase 2 studies in Taiwan. But the studies have been conducted in a small group of people, about 43 people with mild to moderate Alzheimer's disease. And the anti-amyloid vaccine acts, it is designed to mount an immune response against the amyloid plaques in the brain and clear them without causing inflammation.
Okay, all right.
So taking care of inflammation part, at the same time removing the plaques. Yeah, and the phase 2 studies, they went very well, very successful, and about 86, close to 96% of participants were able to mount a significant immune response. So they were able to clear the plaques. Okay. Yeah, and that is now in the phase 2 stage. Now more larger studies are required before we can make anything out of, take anything away from that.
A study with only 43
people. It's a very small study. So they're planning.
Shows promise, but yeah.
So they're planning larger scale study, and then there's the anti-tau antibody.
Okay.
So we were all along we were talking about targeting the amyloid plaque, and the research is showing that cognitive impairment is more, it has more correlation with the amount of tau tangles in the brain than the plaque.
That's interesting.
So it's believed that plaque is just the initiating event.
Initiating mechanism.
Yeah, and then from that point, what carries on, what drives the disease is actually the tau tangles and the neurodegeneration.
Right, because as I understand it, the amyloid protein interferes with signals in the brain.
Yeah.
But it's the tau protein that actually causes cell death.
Absolutely. Yeah. The neurodegeneration and the cell death is taken on. That's happening because of the toxic tau that's accumulating. So antibodies directed against tau have been developed, and those drugs are now, there are several pharmaceutical companies have produced those drugs, and their own version of the anti-tau antibody, and that is now in the phase 2 stage again.
Okay, so small group studies.
Yeah, small group studies, small number. And the phase 2 studies are, about hundreds of people maximum would be there, and conducted for about 1 to 2 years. Okay. And the purpose is to study the safety and the efficacy. That's right. That they're not looking for side effects and all that at that point of time, not much. Along with anti-tau antibody, anti-tau vaccine has also been developed now, and that is in still earlier phase. So phase 1B.
Okay.
So they're looking at the safety. It is found to be safe and well tolerated, and it is now they're planning phase 2 big studies on that anti-tau vaccine. So that again, with the difference between the vaccine and the antibody is that the antibody might have to be given multiple times, right? Right. Because they are effective only for a short period of time. Whereas the vaccine is like a one-time.
Trains the body's own immune system.
That's right. The immune system, the body itself is developing its own immune system. So that is where the anti-tau vaccine is there. So these are the drugs that we have to look out for. And there is a lot of interest in all these drugs in the research community, and also among all the thousands of people who are dealing with the disease. So this is something to hope for the future, that there are some studies going on as well. Okay.
Well, it's good to hear that there's lots in development.
That's right. Yeah.
Even when we get the occasional bit of disappointing news about drugs that they have to stop trials on, that there's still things that are showing progress.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
The fact that you have one that they stopped and have trying to restart, I find really intriguing. Yeah. In terms of the possibilities there.
Absolutely,
All right. Well, thanks for joining me today.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
And thanks everyone else for joining us. If you have some questions on this topic or any other topic, please feel free to reach out to us at either 403-290-0110, or you can send us an email at findsupport@alzheimercalgary.ca. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another video. If you have questions on any topic you'd like to see us address in one of these, please reach out to us and let us know, and we'll do our best to respond to that. And thanks again. See you soon.
Thank you.